This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. Donald Trump is meddling in another state ahead of the 2026 election. Today, we will tell you what state that is and why it matters. Meanwhile, oil prices are spiraling around the world, and the president is clearly getting nervous about his war in Iran, what it is doing to the global economy, and we'll tell you why, because just before we came onto the air, he said something that revealed he might be starting to get cold feet. And finally, Donald Trump was there to see the coffins of U.S. service members who've already been killed in the conflict arrive at Dover Air Force Base. And there was a major moment of disrespect. We're going to talk about that. And with us today to talk about these stories and more is award-winning journalist and former ABC News reporter, Terry Moran. This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. We start the day by focusing on Maricopa County, Arizona. Even as the administration pushes forward with new fights at home and abroad, Donald Trump continues to focus on the election he lost in 2020, and he is magnifying concerns that he plans to meddle in the 2026 midterm elections in major ways. According to new reporting from Politico, the Trump administration is now seeking records tied to the 2020 election in Arizona's Maricopa County, the state's largest county and the fourth largest county in the nation, a place that has been a longtime focus of Trump's fraud claims. The development became public after Arizona Republican Senate President Warren Peterson posted that he had complied with a federal grand jury subpoena related to the Arizona State Senate's controversial audit of Maricopa County ballots. Peterson said those records have now been turned over to the FBI. Donald Trump celebrated the development on Truth Social, writing, "Great!" in all caps, exclamation points. But officials in Maricopa County say they have not received a subpoena themselves. County spokesperson Jason Berry told Politico that if the county does receive one, it will cooperate. Maricopa County, of course, has long been the centerpiece of Trump's claims about a stolen 2020 election. But the Arizona Senate audit, along with multiple other investigations, found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. None. And Arizona is not the only place where Trump and his allies have continued to revisit the 2020 vote. As previously reported, FBI agents seized ballots and voting records in Fulton County, Georgia, another jurisdiction that became central to Trump's claims that the election was stolen from him. And that seizure spurred worries that Trump had directed the FBI to conduct what might amount to an illegal and unconstitutional federal recount of that election. Trump himself had said the agents would find out who actually won the 2020 election, despite the fact that the filings with judges to go get those ballots and the claims of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence said nothing about a recount of the 2020 election. But that's why the president seems to think they went in. Officials there have repeatedly pushed back on allegations of widespread fraud. And the focus on Georgia has likewise escalated fears that the administration plans to engage in voter suppression or other election meddling in that state this year. Adding to concerns, last month, the Georgia State Election Board reprimanded Elon Musk's America PAC for violating election rules after it sent out partially pre-filled absentee ballot applications to voters in several counties. Georgia law prohibits outside groups from distributing absentee ballot applications that are already filled in with a voter's personal information. Taken together, the developments have alarmed election experts around the country, especially as the Trump Justice Department continues to demand that states hand over their voter rolls to the federal government, as Trump continues his campaign to delegitimize mail-in voting, and as he does nothing to walk back his statement earlier this year that he wants to nationalize and take over America's elections. I'm going to bring into the conversation my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, one more bad data point in this whole story of Trump trying to take over elections, but people have heard me talk about Maricopa County constantly. This is a place that is central to the president's mind. It's central to election experts who worry the president's meddling because it's such a pivotal swing county in the United States. And now we're hearing today that the administration clearly has the FBI trying to look again at what happened into 2020, which has got folks worried about 2026.
Right. And when you say look again, it's important to point out that there's been 60 lawsuits about the 2020 election being stolen. And this group is going over on these election lawsuits. This has been proven over and over again. So not that our audience particularly needs to know this. I know they're up on this stuff, but there's been an overwhelming amount of cases brought in front of judges, by the way, that many of them were Trump appointees or Republican appointees that didn't go their way. And so this is a settled issue. What Trump's trying to do is cast doubt on the integrity of our elections, right? Cast some fear on turning out for those elections, cast doubt on the results so he can contend them in November and December 2026. And so part of our job, Miles, is just continuing to educate the public about the truth here and finding partners, and we've talked about this a lot, that can educate the parts of the public that you and I can't directly talk to.
Well, Xander, I think this has people rightfully worried and beyond worried. I mean, it validates the concern that the administration is going to go state by state, swing state by swing state, to meddle, to gain information that might allow them to suppress the vote. That's now happened in Georgia. That's now happening in Arizona. You've got other states where the administration made threats like Minnesota that, it will leave and will take out the invasion of ICE, but only if you give us your voter rolls. I mean, these are very thuggish tactics. And, I would say we need to be prepared for this to actually be the most contested election in American history.
Totally. It's a bizarre situation, right? Like there's this like asymmetrical warfare thing going on where it's open season on our democracy and they're just throwing the kitchen sink at us, trying to find any which way that they can break this democracy, intimidate voters, do any type of voter suppression tactic they can possibly do in order to emerge victorious, or at least not have Trump in a position where he'll likely be impeached if there is a blue wave or what have you. And so we've just got to keep defending our democracy and educating the public. Look, like we've shared things that people can do previously. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about this at length. You can volunteer to be a poll worker, powerthepolls.org. You can go there and get information on that. Make sure to follow your Secretary of State on social media. That's going to be your source of truth on what's actually going on. So that's if you haven't done that already, wherever you're on social media, make sure you find your Secretary of State and follow them.
Right on, my friend. Very helpful. And I would just say to folks, if this is the first time you're joining us, go to defiance.org. Check it out. You can sign up for free to get our weekly updates and our actions. You see that on the crawl on the bottom. Every single Wednesday, we announce a new action to counter Donald Trump's abuses of power, actions that you can take. And if you join as a member of defiance.org, you can help fuel additional actions to combat this administration's abuses of power. And Xander, you note the election consequences. Our next story is something that's going to have extraordinary consequences for the 2026 election. As we warned last week, the economic impact of the Iran war is already showing up somewhere Americans will feel it immediately: at the gas pump. According to a new AAA data report by CBS News, the national average price of gas has now climbed to $3.48 per gallon. That's 48 cents higher than just last week and nearly 60 cents higher than a month ago. In some states, prices are far higher. Drivers in California are paying around $5.20 per gallon, while diesel prices have jumped nearly 90 cents in a week. Analysts say prices could keep rising, with some forecasts predicting the national average could approach $4 per gallon if the Iran conflict continues. And the reason comes down to one critical choke point in the global energy market: the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply moves through that narrow waterway between Iran and Oman. Since the war began, shipping through the strait has become increasingly perilous. Oil prices briefly surged above $100 per barrel as markets reacted to the risk of tanker disruptions. Remember, last week we said to you that was the number to watch. If oil, which started the year in the $70 range, surged above $100 a barrel, we would be in scary territory. And it has. But even as tensions rise, Trump is encouraging oil tankers to, well, basically suck it up. Here is Fox News host Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends this morning, relaying what Donald Trump had told him earlier.
Here's exactly what he said. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. They have no navy. We sunk all their ships. He went on to say, he said, look, yeah, there's risk in the region. The region's volatile. They are.
Wow. So there's that. But then this happened. In a phone interview with CBS News this afternoon, Donald Trump claimed that the war with Iran is actually very complete, pretty much. Sounds to me like someone who's getting nervous about what's happening in the oil markets and with terror threats. Perhaps he's trying to spin the narrative that he's done everything he needed. Iran is now stable. He solved the crisis. Mission accomplished. Maybe. But at the same time, Trump also suggested the United States might take control of the Strait of Hormuz if Iran interferes with shipping, further escalating the conflict, giving America a permanent reason to be in the region and surely continuing that war. Trump, in fact, said the U.S. could, quote, do a lot about the waterway and warned that if Iran disrupts it, it could mean the end of that country. The growing danger in that shipping lane is now prompting international action. French President Emmanuel Macron says France and several allies are preparing a defensive naval mission to escort commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz and help reopen shipping routes. Because if that choke point stays disrupted, the country would cripple, the consequences rather, would ripple through the entire global economy. And as I noted last week when we talked about this issue, this is different than it was before. Just sending naval assets to escort ships is not going to provide the confidence that companies need and that the civilians on those boats need. Why? Because the Iranians have invested in asymmetric capabilities to try to go destroy those ships, to send drones in, maritime drones, aerial drones. That's the worry. Now, the Trump administration is trying to dig themselves out of a hole of their own making and is taking some questionable steps to try to stabilize the oil market. Very questionable steps. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. is lifting some restrictions on Russian oil, allowing India, for instance, to purchase previously sanctioned barrels in order to increase global supply. Officials say the move is meant to ease pressure on energy prices, but that decision raises a striking contradiction. Because just yesterday, Iran's foreign minister appeared on Meet the Press and acknowledged that Russia is actively helping them in the conflict. Take a look.
Let me ask you, because NBC News is reporting that Iran is receiving help from Russia to help locate U.S. forces. Are you receiving any help from Russia?
Well, we have a strategic partnership with Russia.
So that's a yes?
And well, a military cooperation between Iran and Russia is not something new. It's not a secret. It has been in the past and it's still there and will continue in the future.
Is Russia helping you locate U.S. forces? I just want to be very clear here.
Well, I don't have exact military information. As far as I know, we have a very good partnership with Russia.
So they are helping you. They are providing intelligence.
Well, they are helping us in many different directions. I don't have any detailed information.
So as the war expands, the U.S. is now loosening oil sanctions on Russia to stabilize energy markets, even as Iran publicly confirms that Russia is helping them in the fight. We are helping to make rich a country that is helping another country target and kill our troops. Think about that. And speaking of danger to the United States, new reporting also suggests the White House delayed a major federal security warning tied to the growing conflict with Iran. According to Reuters, the Trump administration asked that a federal intelligence bulletin warning of potential Iran-related threats inside the United States be placed on hold for review by the White House. The bulletin was prepared by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the National Counterterrorism Center. It was intended to be distributed urgently to state and local law enforcement agencies nationwide. But a Trump administration official told Reuters the White House had blocked the document so it could undergo additional review to reportedly ensure its accuracy. That warning itself was drafted by the DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and reporting reviewed by the Daily Mail says the 5-page document warned of elevated threats tied to the Iranian government. Potential targets, the memo said, could include U.S. military personnel, government facilities, Jewish and Israeli institutions, and Iranian dissidents living in the United States. The bulletin also reportedly outlined possible tactics that Iranian proxies could use and offered guidance for local law enforcement on how to respond. I will tell you this: the White House withholding such bulletins is unprecedented. I would know. I used to write them. Clearly, the White House is scared to tell the American people that they are at grave risk of attack. It is suppressing the information, and every hour that ticks by for them to review that 5-page memo is an opportunity lost to prepare the country for what's to come. I'm going to bring Xander Schultz back into the conversation. Xander, this is absolutely and completely unconscionable that they are doing this. I mean, I noted there in the segment that I had written these before. These are not long, complicated documents. This doesn't require days of review by the Trump administration to look at a 5-page memo that just says, hey, warning, the United States might be in danger. And now the administration is trying to cover its ass by saying, oh, we just want to make sure that the memo is accurate. Cool, that's something you could do in an hour. Why has it taken days? I wonder what you speculate.
Well, you've been in that seat. What is the value we're losing by them not coming forward with those memos? What wheels go in motion when those memos are released? How does that keep us safer? I just want to understand more as someone who's been in that seat.
That's a really great question. I mean, think of these bulletins, these terrorism advisories that go out from the Department of Homeland Security as the federal government's official way of saying to other federal agencies and state and local law enforcement, here is what we are most worried about, and prioritize your assets accordingly. So I'll give you a very specific example. If this had gone out on Friday, and this had gone out to every major and medium-sized city in the country that was worried about being targeted, just that part about protecting Jewish institutions, that's the type of thing that might lead a city like Philadelphia, for instance, to go deploy additional resources at Jewish centers, or a city like Pittsburgh to go put a car outside the Tree of Life synagogue, which has previously been targeted by a terrorist attack, or a city like Chicago to tell folks on the beat, hey, you should do additional patrols near synagogues in your area, or U.S. consulates or foreign consulates in the city. Those are the types of things that can change the security posture in a city to create a deterrent effect against potential attacks. Now, that's just one angle here. I mean, the other piece of this is that there are intelligence collection functions in these cities around the country that are really crucial from state and locals. If they have a see something, say something posture because they're worried about an Iranian terrorist attack or an attack from Iranian proxies, they are going to prioritize looking into different potential targets, looking into different potential sources of information that can better protect the American people. In fact, I'll tell you this, Xander, when I was at the Department of Homeland Security, I demanded a study of how often community awareness helped us stop terrorist attacks. I wanted to know, was it 5% of the time or 10% of the time that a family member or a community member or a local cop helped us stop a terrorist attack? No, the answer I got from a full analysis of the 5 years of terrorist attacks we stopped before I came to DHS was that in 75% of cases, there was a local nexus. In other words, 3 out of 4 times we successfully stopped a terror plot is because there was a crucial local tripwire. Local authorities were on the alert, a community was on the alert, a town was on the alert, someone saw something and said something. So the White House trying to censor its agencies from saying anything actually has very, very serious risks associated with it.
Wow. Thank you for that background. Understanding how effective it is kind of triggers a scary thought for me in some ways, Miles. And look, there's types of conspiracy theories I don't believe, or I'm very hesitant to believe in. One's where there's false flag events and the government's coordinating things and whatnot through a large amount of people. But history is littered with examples of ambitious empires that want to have a reason to do something, that just let their guard down a little to allow for that something. Maybe they don't know what that something is. They're not coordinating with the other side, but they let their guard down a little to give them the reason to prolong the war, to take territory, etc. And I am very cynical about the Trump regime, right? Like I don't have to kind of channel some cynicism. My deep cynicism is that might be an underlying reason why they're not being, forthright with law enforcement across America. Is Miles? It sounds like it's hypercritical to be forthright. It's the number one way we thwart attacks, and maybe this administration, without. I'm projecting, right? I'm just guessing, but that's where my mind went when you explained. This administration wants that event to happen.
I've got to say, the person whose name is over your shoulder, Timothy Snyder, who wrote that book on freedom, he just published in a post today on Substack that his view was that there are likely elements inside the administration who wouldn't mind if the United States got attacked because it would embolden them to continue an autocratic takeover in the United States. I mean, the type of thing that, Timothy Snyder, I'm sure 10 years ago would have said, that's conspiracy theory. I would never imagine a president or his administration would do something like that. Whether or not that's the case, impossible for us to prove right now in this conversation.
Sure.
The fact that people like you, scholars of democracy like Timothy Snyder, have such deep distrust of the administration that you're willing to accept the possibility that they might be maybe not fomenting, but welcoming a terrorist attack on the United States, that's pretty scary to me. And I think it's not misplaced fear, Xander. There's no trust left in what this administration says. There's no good reason to suppress urgent bulletins to the American people that they might be in danger of attack unless, one, the administration is just so politically embarrassed by what it's done, it doesn't want to acknowledge that it's invited greater danger to the American people. Or two, what you just said, for some ungodly reason, they want to welcome that type of violence on their own. And I'll tell you, there are sick people inside the Trump administration. I mean this very seriously. Sick people who do think that way. The same types of people who have helped the president deploy forces across this country to try to foment attacks on U.S. forces, who want protesters to be violent, who want to see chaos in the streets, who want to use it as a reason to invoke things like the Insurrection Act and to enhance the president's powers. There are real people being paid by actual taxpayer dollars right now inside the federal government who think that way. And I'll let you jump to conclusions about who those people are. Let me take us to our third story of the day, which is a controversy involving Donald Trump and Fox News that is drawing attention at the war with Iran and how it's being covered on television. Over the weekend, Trump attended a dignified, or what was supposed to be a dignified transfer ceremony at Dover Air Force Base for 6 American service members who were killed in the conflict. But the president quickly drew criticism after appearing at the solemn ceremony wearing a baseball cap. As attendees bowed their heads in respect, Trump did not bother to remove his hat and instead just looked down and fiddled with his jacket button, akin to a petulant child opening their eyes, perhaps, during family prayer. The dignified transfer is one of the most solemn duties of a commander-in-chief, marking the return of fallen service members to the United States. Images of Trump wearing the cap spread quickly online, with critics saying it showed a clear lack of respect for the moment. That controversy then led to another problem over at Fox News. During coverage of the ceremony Sunday morning, the network aired archival footage from an earlier transfer ceremony instead of video from the event that took place on Saturday. The older footage showed Trump without the hat, which viewers quickly noticed. Fox News later issued an on-air apology. In fact, a weekend host told viewers the network had, quote, inadvertently aired video from an older dignified transfer and said the mistake happened during the video sourcing process. But the situation raised even more questions as the day went on. Later coverage switched to the correct footage from Saturday's ceremony, but the video had been edited so that Trump himself was cut out of the frame. So if there was ever a doubt that Fox was basically state-run media, I think this will silence those doubts. Perhaps what is most upsetting about all of that is that lost in the controversy is the reason the ceremony happened in the first place. 6 American service members returned home this weekend in flag-draped coffins. I'm going to bring back into the conversation Xander Schultz. Xander, I was disgusted when I woke up and saw this. It's something that you just reflexively know. I mean, I get told to take this cap off at dinner just down the stairs at my own house. I get told to take off a hat at Thanksgiving dinner. If I'm told by my wife to take it off at dinner at the downstairs table, you would think, even if Donald Trump, it didn't occur to him, someone around him would say, take the damn hat off.
Yeah. I've been thinking about how to take in all this traumatic news without feeling the trauma of it all. And a party trick I've been using recently is just thinking about how each of these moments can be assets in the fight to eventually defeat these guys. And I think, you know, in the big scheme of things, Trump is doing a lot of very terrifying authoritarian things, not taking off his hat. Not that big, but it's the type of thing within that scheme of killing American citizens and whatnot. It's the type of thing and image, though, that helps us turn the tide. And I just want to read some data on the types of folks who are against this war in general and would be moved by Trump disrespecting soldiers. Women are 26-point opposition margin. This is a group that turns out at elections. Independents are 2-1 opposed to the war. College-educated whites are 21 points underwater on Iran. Veterans and military families, 64% said Iraq wasn't worth it. They're super credible as messengers. Gen Z, those are the group that would get sent to war. 76% oppose the war. Black voters, 83% oppose the war. And so I say all that because these moments in time, these images and whatnot are helpful fuel in the fight to turn out those communities, embolden them, turn each of those potential voters even into an organizer of their community. And so that's how I'm choosing to interpret the bad news of the day, including this news. And it is really, you know, at least the party trick's working on me. It does get me excited about what's possible because of how poorly he's fumbling moments each day.
I mean, if you just think about the fact, Xander, that this one act, launching this war, could spark a global financial crisis, the deaths of more service members, possible terrorist attacks on the United States. I mean, I can't imagine if I was an elected Republican, the president saddling me with worse circumstances to run on a GOP record in 2026. And to your point about silver linings, I would say, if anything, Donald Trump has all but guaranteed a wave of the political opposition taking over seats in the midterm elections. I mean, there's still a lot of months between now and then, but I mean, this is the type of decision that is just a giant political albatross.
I want to foot stomp what you're saying. Not only is it a terrible issue, in particular, low and middle income rural Americans get hit the hardest when oil prices go up. They have no public transit alternatives. They drive far distances. They spend the highest percentage of their income on gas and heating. And so not only is it a terrible issue broadly, we're all going to feel the pain of it, but those least insulated are the types of rural Americans that a lot of the new Republican Party relies on for their strength. And they rightfully should be terrified. And what would be great, gang, let me just do a direct to camera to these guys. What would be great, gang, is you turn that terrifying feeling you have into action to curb the president, to reclaim your power as Congress, to do something to not allow that to happen, to protect your constituents. You know, that one demand on you, the whole point of your job, do some of that instead of feeling scared. We'll appreciate you deeply for it.
Yeah, well, it's a very good point. And I will be interested to watch the next few weeks, especially if oil prices continue to surge, how Republican candidates are talking about this back home in their districts. My guess is they're going to find very awkward ways to distance themselves
gonna
from
be
the
weird.
president. But joining us
Gonna
to
be
talk
bad.
about all of this, all of the news of the day, is the incredible Terry Moran, independent journalist and
Hey.
founder of Real Patriotism, a multimedia news and commentary project on Substack, YouTube, and social media, a former reporter at ABC News, and an award-winning journalist to boot. Terry, welcome to Defiance Daily, my friend. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you guys again. Thank you.
Hey, what's going on, brother? Twice in like 10 days. It's nice
I know
That's
it's a
right.
good day. It's a good day.
It's a good day. Terry, I want to first get your reaction on this. I don't know if you've even seen the comment yet. Trump said, I think in a CBS News report this afternoon, that the war is pretty much done. He's pretty much accomplished everything. Do you think that that's real? Do you think it's the president running scared because of the potential economic catastrophe unfolding? Or is it maybe both?
He's trying to taco, right? Trump always chickens out. And he does it on Wall Street, and Wall Street moves, whenever their emotions are swept away in one direction or another. This is tougher for him, though, no question about it. And the phrase he used is so telling. He said that the war is very complete. Now, I'm going to give you a C if you put that on your paper, and I'm teaching fourth grade, right? Because very complete is not, what does that mean? And that's the point. He looks for verbiage that he can throw out that will move people in the way he wants to move them. His military is going to say, you can't walk away right now. The job isn't finished. And more important than that, the enemy always gets a say. And in this instance, it's pretty clear that the Iranian regime, an odious and tyrannical bunch of thugs, but they are not going to quit. And so you can't just throw words at a problem and tens of millions of people say, oh, well, Trump said X, therefore it must be true. They know what's going on, and they haven't finished, the Iranians, trying to damage their Gulf neighbors, trying to keep a lid on their own people, and trying to hurt the United States. Trump's in it now. Now he's reassured Wall Street, and there's no question the American military has performed incredibly. They have knocked out, basically Iran is defenseless, but they're canny. They've been preparing this day for a long time. They've got ways of hurting Saudi Arabia, of the Gulf nations, and maybe beyond. And that hurts Trump, and he's afraid of it.
Terry, we talk a lot on this program about how to make sure Trump's base or potential Trump voters get this information. It's a huge challenge. There's incredible journalists like you out there doing great work. And then oftentimes, if you're a truth teller, you lose that audience over time, or you never reach them. And so I wonder, in this modern media environment, how do you think we make sure that oil prices going up, soldier deaths, the deaths of civilians in Iran, that all that attribution gets placed in the right place amongst his following? How do we solve that?
That's a great problem, and it's a hard problem, but not as hard in the United States as it might be, as it's going to get if we continue down this path. I've been in Hungary, certainly in Russia, Poland, all kinds of places, North Korea, for goodness sake, where there is a complete lock on the flow of information by the ruling class. Maybe Putin allows like little tiny websites that he'll sabotage. He'll have his gang sabotage from time to time, just to show that he doesn't shut everything down. Kim Jong-un doesn't. These days, that's harder because of the let 1,000 flowers bloom of social media, your work, my work, which is great. And even in North Korea, right, they're having trouble when people are sneaking cell phone cameras into on the back of food trucks, taking pictures and smuggling them out. You can see some of that. But we don't have it that bad yet. And so this information will get out to most people, whether they believe it or not. Right now, that's the harder problem, that they believe everything Trump tells them. He could tell them the sky is green and the grass is blue. And they'd say, yeah, look at that green sky. And that said, we still have the last resort, which is reality. They're going to bump into it. If gas goes above $4, which it could, if we head into a recession, which we could, if God forbid the death toll climbs of Americans, it's already pretty bad for Iranians, innocent Iranians among them, then reality kicks in at some point. He can't dictate reality. He might be able to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, but if you're losing money, they're gonna hold it against Trump.
Terry, I want to ask you about this quote from the president this week about the threat of reprisal attacks in the homeland, because this strikes me as the type of mission accomplished moment or other foible that will stick with him throughout history, which is when he was asked about the threat of retaliation and whether Americans should be worried. And his response was sort of a flippant two-word response, I guess, the president said. I mean, that just strikes me, your program is called Real Patriotism. That just seems to me the most unpatriotic and disgusting and scary thing a president could say is, well, maybe my people get killed because of this. Just sort of dismissive. And then he continued on after that, sort of justifying, look, this is what happens. You get into a conflict and, people just get killed. Just seems, again, to be the antithesis of leadership. I want your take on that quote.
Yeah, and Miles, the antithesis of American leadership, right? We are used to presidents who give a damn about whether we're killed and vulnerable to be killed in terror attacks. And his, I guess, shows the oceanic selfishness of this man. I mean, it's staggering. If you wrote the character Donald Trump for a movie, they wouldn't make it because it's too unrealistic. He's the worst possible, imaginable human being and beyond imagining. And yet, obviously, he has an iron grip. He's won 2 presidential elections. He's the dominant political figure of our time on the globe, not just in America. He's changed the world with this ferocious and broken personality of his. He manages to captivate people. But you're right, that he cares about himself, as he shows over and over. And in that moment, you want a president to say, we're going to do everything we can. You don't want him to lie. It'll never happen. But he says, if it happens, whatever. Hey, don't hold me accountable. Don't hold anybody accountable. It's like rain falling from the sky, getting killed by a terrorist attack after we make war on Iran. I would say this, though, and you probably have some understanding of this, Miles. I remember, obviously, 9/11, and remember learning afterwards what happened within our government. We nearly had those guys. We were one phone call away from the FBI on the 9/11 plot. There's the guy they arrested, right? The 12th bomber. There's the guy does flying lessons, doesn't want to learn how to land, and people notice that. There's the people at the air desk at the airport who pay in cash for first class seats. It's all so close. One person says that isn't right, and 9/11 doesn't happen, and that's when we were fat, lazy, happy, and clueless. Right? It was the end of the great post-Cold War, nothing is going on, history ended era. Today, our systems are so much more aggressive, maybe too aggressive in terms of privacy. It is hard to launch something major. Maybe somebody pops something off somewhere, but we're safer than we were, 25 years ago.
I'm going to flip it over to Xander, but I just wanted to say, Terry, really quickly on that front, the caveat would be, unless you have an administration that tells you to look the other way, or unless you have a White House that, as it did this weekend, blocks an intelligence bulletin from going out that says to state and local law enforcement, this is what we are most worried about, is an attack from this institution, is we're kind of counting on those data points to come in and be consolidated. Now, enterprising law enforcement agents at the state and local level understand we're in a conflict with Iran, but a lot don't. And a lot do take their cues from the federal government. I mean, one thing I noted earlier in the program is we did this study a few years ago at DHS that found that 3/4 of terrorist plots that we stopped had a community nexus. It was someone in the community, a local cop or a neighbor, who saw something unusual, and that flag was either important or instrumental in stopping a terrorist attack. And so we need those data points. And if the administration is saying to their agencies, DHS and the FBI and the National Counterterrorism Center, don't go out there and talk about Iran, well, they're also discouraging them from getting feedback on that fight. They're saying this is something political and not to be touched. And to me, that's pretty scary and invites attack on this country, if not making it more likely.
Yeah, and you're right. Those people who dropped a dime, those are real patriots, if I may. That's real patriotism.
That's right.
Terry, we started Defiance to answer. What can we do in this moment?
I can't hear you, Xander.
Oh, you have my audio?
Can you?
Anything? Miles, you got me?
Oh, I can. Yeah, I do have you.
Interesting.
Do you want to drop?
We had
Do you
this
want?
happen before.
Do you want to drop and come back in?
Yeah, I'll drop.
I can hear you. I can't hear Xander.
All right. No
Well,
worries.
that's because Terry, we like to keep him muted. He's our least favorite person in the program. Yeah, there. Thank God, we just got him out of here. Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty sure our producer just deleted his password from StreamYard, so he can't come back. He can't come back. Well, look, one other thing that I was going to ask you is about the political ramifications right now. I mean, look, we don't know, given the president's comment this afternoon, if he's trying to quickly wind down this conflict because he's getting scared, or if, as you noted, these are just words he's putting out there to try to assuage the markets. But I want to ask about Republicans and midterms. I mean, if you were a Republican in a battleground state right now, how would you be reacting to what's happening with the president? I mean, these folks have made their bed with Donald Trump, and now he seems to be torching their prospects in the midterms by launching a very, very unpopular war, if the polls are to be believed.
Yeah, I'd be either furious or, and I think most of them are going to be all in, all in. Look, you've thrown all in with this guy, and here he's gone and done it. And they're in a much more vulnerable position than presidents and politicians usually are in wars. And I'm afraid to say I've seen enough of it in my life to have some understanding of it. Nobody, none of us, not a single ordinary American citizen, not one, had any say in whether we should go to war in this massive war against Iran. They own it. Well, he owns it. And because they abdicated their constitutional duty as members of Congress to stand up and say, wait a minute, Mr. President, you've clearly amassed the biggest armed force pointed at Iran that we have amassed against anybody since Iraq. That's not an operation. Clearly, this is either the threat of war or war, and you have to come to Congress and get authorization for it. Of course, he didn't, so he owns it. And they own it for ignoring Democrats who said, wait, we can see what's happening. We've got to talk about this. We're the people's representatives. And the Republicans just refused. So this is all over them. Now, if it's a glorious victory that makes us all rich and the Iranians free and happy, well, that'll be great. But wars usually don't turn out that way. And so I bet they're scared. They're scared, but they've got no choice now. They've got to go down every crazy path he goes down. Because what is the purpose of this war? We've got unconditional surrender. We've got very complete, right? We've got weapons of mass destruction. We've got regime change. What is the point of the war? Those things would have been hashed out in a proper democratic debate, small d. Mm-hmm. They didn't do it. Now they own it.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes Americans have this almost idealistic idea of what happens after a revolution because we have this very...
No.
I don't
Still no Xander.
Oh, no. All right, Miles, you take us home.
Sorry.
This is also, Terry, the Iranians, is they know that Xander asks the most penetrating questions.
I was going to say he's a lot more interesting than you. So I
got to tell you, just as a quick aside, I was over with our friends this weekend at MS Now on their show The Weekend, and I was getting ready to go on set, and all of a sudden, everything died in the studio. The lights, their backgrounds, their computers. I mean, it was a full shutdown in the building, and everyone looked at each other, and the folks in the control room said, this has never happened before. And I looked at one of the other guests, a Wall Street Journal reporter, and I said, this could be one of the reprisals. And, it took them 20 minutes to get everything back up and running, and we didn't know. And then one of our friend Jonathan Capehart got an update in his ear. And it was an electrician downstairs who wasn't supposed to be working on the weekend, and he was, and he cut it off. So I kind of ate crow. I was like, well, I said it could be an Iranian cyber attack. It clearly isn't unless they sent the electrician in there. But I also want to pick up on that point, Terry, because this is a live fire exercise here. And I think that people don't quite understand, especially people who weren't paying much attention during the rise of ISIS or the war on terror. Younger generations don't quite know what this moment means. I mean, Iran is a country that has spent decades laying the groundwork for reprisal attacks if its regime is threatened. it has never faced such a foundational threat to its existence as it does now. And that's not me playing the violin for the cruel and despotic Iranian regime, but it is to say we have to be realistic that this is a country that has actually put sleeper cells all around the world. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a known fact that they have operatives. And your former outlet, ABC News, just reported today that there are encrypted signals that have been intercepted, that have been sent out of the regime around the world. They're not sure where or why, but there is speculation among intelligence officials that these are literal operational orders going out to sleeper cells to activate. In fact, they're seeing part of the broadcast spectrum come to life that was previously dead. And that's all they can see, is that there are these communications coming out of the regime. They're going around the world. And the worry is they are activating these cells for potential terrorist attacks. There's the story there. There was another story, I think, about this from the Washington Post. So I want to get your sense of this. Even if Donald Trump tries to end this conflict today, the danger does not disappear. They've killed the head of the regime. We're going to be facing reprisal threats from the Iranians, perhaps for a generation.
Yes, exactly. The school children of Minab will be avenged. That is their deepest desire for many of them. Remember, much of the leadership believes with great zealotry the Islamic revolution launched by Ayatollah Khomeini back in the 1970s. They believe that they are destined to bring Allah's word as they understood, as Khomeini understood it, to not just their own people, but to the world. They believe that it's written into their constitution that Israel must be destroyed, right? This is not some passing fancy. This is not, it's easier to deal with a gangster regime, just a corrupt regime like Putin, basically, although he's got nukes. And this is the lesson for everybody and all the gangsters around the world: get your nukes, because that's what protects you. But in this instance, you're right. It'll be a generation of fanatics, of people who are fanatically patriotic for the land of their birth. They may not even like the Ayatollahs, but those dead schoolgirls are going to haunt us. They should, morally. And I think in terms of the security situation that you're talking about. And I think the other thing to remember is Iran knew that if this day came, and they, in some ways they provoked it and wished it, but if this day came, they knew a lot of them would die, the leadership. And they did quickly, right? Levels 1, levels 2. But they had they had a plan to scatter authority, scatter operational capacities around the country in various ways, and outlast the initial strike. They know Americans have no patience for suffering or war. One of the things that we've seen, contemptible things out of the White House, are these videos that they did, right, where they showed the strikes and it was action movie, Stallone and Van Damme and all that stuff, action movie, Tom Cruise stuff, and then kaboom, or football stuff. I think Ed Reed was one of them, and made a joke of the bombing of Iran. And they think, because they're twerps, that those kind of memes are, funny or show how great they are. And anybody like me who criticizes them is either old, guilty, or weak, or they don't get it. They have no sense of humor. Well, the reason you don't do that is because it's wrong. It's a sacrilege. Death in war. Anybody who's actually ever been in war. My father joined the U.S. Army in 1942 after Pearl Harbor and came back in 1946, and he never said a word about any of the combat he's seen. Real men, most of them don't. That said, what you have is now a distributed system that now can outlast much of what the United States wants to do. Yeah, they've gotten all the missile sites, they've gotten plenty of the drone sites too, but drones are easy to make and cheap to make and all the rest of it. Don't think this is the end. Trump doesn't get to decide when it's over. I don't think he quite realizes that. Unless there's a surrender or the total lack of capacity to fight back or a revolution, Iran has a say in when this war ends.
Terry, a lot of philosophers and historians have said that some of the greatest mistakes of world history have been a failure to anticipate secondary and tertiary effects, a failure to anticipate unintended consequences. And you look at this conflict, and there's reporting today that the administration and top officials were, quote, surprised that there has been this level of pushback in Iran. They thought this was going to go like the seizure of Maduro in Venezuela, and which is very galling to me because it's validation that the people you put in power really do matter, because plenty of other, even semi-informed observers of the region could have told you there would be a cascade of dominoes if this happened. I mean, just look at the fact that they thought the initial wave could take away most of Iran's military capabilities. Yeah, but Iran is allied and has been getting closer to, for the past 20 years, the Russians, and a little more recently, for the past decade, closer to the Chinese. And we have reporting, of course, this week that the Russians are giving intelligence information to Iran. The Chinese are shipping military supplies. You're not just fighting one country. You're fighting one country with other despotic allies that are going to keep funneling arms in because they know it will drain the United States. That was such an easy thing to foresee. If you had just called you or me up 10 days ago, the White House wouldn't have done that, but either of us could have gotten on the phone with someone and said, you know, this is a very likely thing that will happen, is there's no way for this war to go quickly because of the backup and the reserves. And then you add to that, Terry, to your point you were just making, the other unintended consequence is a regime like this, where the people were protesting in the streets. You've now given those people who were protesting against the regime a reason to protest against the United States. You've killed little schoolgirls in Tehran. You have validated what the regime has been saying for years when they say death to America. Have we not just radicalized a whole generation of Iranians that we had hoped would instead pursue liberty?
Probably. I mean, what would you? How would you feel? How would I feel? How would anyone feel if the United States, if another country bombed one of our schools, and a girls' school, and they laid out the little girls, you know, and it's pretty clear that we did. Now, you know, it's war, right? There's a lot of death in war, but we'd feel furious. We would never feel the same way against a country that did that. We don't really. We've launched a 20-year war because of it that we lost in the end. We were blinded with anger and fury, and righteously so. It's a natural human reaction. Yes, we have just created a lot of enemies who were looking to us for help, but not this kind of help. And then now Israel is gone and destroyed the refineries. The oil depots all around Tehran. So it's going to be miserable. That rain is coming down and poisoning people. There'll be more cases of cancer. This is a monstrous act. And one of the things that I come back to is Trump is I think most of his justifications, which he plucks from the air every 10 minutes, it's a different one, are really covering up what I think it's really about. Him. It's always about him, right? And I think maybe he's getting older. Maybe he senses, maybe we don't know something, and he feels the end is near, and he wants to be glorified for all time as the great conqueror, like Alexander the Great or something. So he goes into this war, hubris, right? He'd had a string of remarkable military accomplishments. Thank you, U.S. military. The bombing of the nuclear sites, the Maduro capture, kidnapping, however you want to say it. And he got over his skis. He thinks he's great. Also, he is a megalomaniac, right? Everything is about he's the greatest ever. And this is a drug for him. He can knock off Iran, and he's even more glorious. And then finally, there is the fact that he is an idiot on many things.
Terry, I couldn't have asked for a better way to end it. You are indeed right that this is the only person on earth who reliably gets his dopamine hits off of airstrikes, and that's a really, really scary thing. The incredible award-winning Terry Moran, you are a wonderful Wonderful person to talk to about this and many other things, Terry. I hope people are following you at Real Patriotism. And I've said this to you before. I mean, and I'm not blowing smoke when I say it. You really are this moment's Tom Brokaw. You bring the big picture view of what this means for the world and for the moment that we're in and for America's place in it. And so grateful as always to have you, my friend. And where else can folks follow you?
Well, Instagram, X, I get in trouble on X, both with ABC News and now that I'm out there on my own, because I mix it up on X. I actually think there are a lot more normal people on X than it looks, but it's a sewer, but I splash around a little bit. But Instagram, YouTube, go to YouTube, Real Patriotism on YouTube, and Substack is home base where I write a lot. And so that's where you can read my writing.
Well, if you're looking for a good time, then follow Terry into the sewer on X and just see what happens. Just see what happens. Terry Moran, thanks for being with us. Good, sir.
Wow. Thanks very much.
I will close today with our segment every day, which is who is joining the Defiance. Yesterday was National Women's Day, and people took to the streets for the Women's March all around the country. In New York's march, one notable woman joined in on the protest. A voice usually saved for the stage, Rihanna raised hers outside of Trump Tower last night.
My choice. My body, my choice. Her body, her choice. My body, my choice. Her body, her choice. My body, my choice. Her body, her choice. My body, my first day. We will not go away. Welcome to your first day. We will not go away. Welcome to your first day. We will not go away. Oh, Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, whoa.
I will note that today there were news reports that an individual had fired shots out of Rihanna's home. The person has been detained, a 35-year-old woman who has been charged with attempted murder. But I will say this, whether or not that is connected with politics, Rihanna, like other musicians who have been standing up lately, continues to get out there, continues to speak her mind, and continues to urge people to defy the fear. And for that, we applaud her, and she is the one today joining the Defiance. Let me bring back into the conversation my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, is that microphone working?
Miles, don't you know you're not supposed to put baby in the corner? You put baby in the corner.
Terry
you want
couldn't hear
Terry
you,
all
so
to
we
yourself.
banished
You. You want Terry all to yourself. The conversation was getting good. You kicked me out. It's fine. I get it. Terry was great. You wanted a couple more questions.
You just didn't hold up. You know, you're not Terry Moran level, man. You're a man of the people. Terry's a man of the gods.
Terry Moran level. Yeah. He had a couple really. I love how Terry stayed focused on the human cost. He stayed focused on it. I like that he called them twerps. That was the best name I've seen. I've seen yet of to describe Stephen Miller in this band of twerps that's in the White House right now. That was great. With regards to who's joining the Defiance, I've spent some time with Rihanna, and she has a foundation called Claire Lionel Foundation. Rihanna is one of the few celebrities that has, oftentimes when you work with celebrity foundations, and I've worked with several, they're a little nervous to step into the fold too much. You're not just talking to their foundation. Oftentimes you're talking to their PR team, their agents, several layers of decision makers that are thinking about their career all the time. Claire Lionel, they used to have a wonderful ED named Justine Lucas that did a wonderful job with that organization. And Rihanna have consistently been voices in a powerful voice really early in these efforts, really early in these fights, and being very public and not pulling punches. So it's not surprising for me to see her out there doing this. She was really vocal and really active in 2020. And, I don't want to, lift the curtain too much, but she was not only active in her own voice, but her organization was recruiting other leaders to lend their voice to the fight in 2020. And so it's always compelling when you see someone who maybe doesn't have to hustle so much or doesn't have to taking risk. And nice to see her out there with the people.
Such a Xander Schultz moment is like, I actually used to do some stuff with Rihanna, and but I can't quite lift the curtain. I'm like, no. I'm sitting here like, lift the curtain. Tell us More stories. It's okay if it gets you in trouble. Don't worry. She's
Yeah,
fine with it.
like I'll tell you one thing. She gave this huge endorsement right before you and I were texting about this earlier today. Amendment 4 in Florida restored voting rights for individuals that had previously been incarcerated for felonies. Restored voting rights for 1.5 million individuals. It's the largest voting restoration project since MLK. Rihanna dropped a tweet in the 24 hours before that vote with her whatever X 100 million person following, and she has a huge following in Florida, and that vote needed I think a 2/3 or 60% in Florida to pass. It got 67%. She played a real role in it and was like actually acting like a political operative, timing her post, being clear about what people should do with clear instructions. So anyway, she's been a gamer for a while.
Dang. Well, Xander, let's close out today by taking a couple of questions from defiance.org members. A few have been posted in the chat. I'm going to throw the first one to you, Xander, because JRR was talking about the Trump administration blocking the terrorism bulletin from coming out. And JRR says, isn't this exactly what Donald Trump did with COVID info when it first came out?
Yeah, I mean, the guy is not a big fan of transparency, despite the administration constantly claiming they're the most transparent administration in history.
Ever.
Ever. Everything's ever with these fucking guys. Yeah, no. And like, I hate to go back to like this cynical way this all started, this conversation started, but it's a group that has ulterior motives. They're not guided by what to do to help Americans succeed and be healthy and be financially safe and to be physically safe. They have other motives. They want to take as much power as they can. They want to subvert the Constitution, subvert our democracy, to claim and hold on to power. And so information gets in the way of that. So whether it's COVID information or information about terrorist attacks or whatnot, sometimes that they have other motives than the ones you'd hope they have.
Well, that leads to a final two questions that I'm going to combine. Brooklyn Paul asks, will the U.S. at the end of this conflict at least have degraded the ability of Iran to foster terror in the rest of the Middle East? And Ken Gilbert asks, Miles, based on your experience, do you believe that racism underlies most or all of Donald Trump's initiative? I'm going to answer those together, Xander, because to Brooklyn Paul's point, in the immediate term, yes, the U.S. airstrikes will be substantially degrading Iran's overall military capabilities. But the thing that you have to factor in here is in the medium term, it dramatically increases the motive that they have to go engage in those terrorist attacks. I'm not saying that the repressive and horrible despotic regime in Iran should have survived. But what I am saying is the way that the United States has gone about this dramatically increases the likelihood that the Iranians will attempt terror attacks against the United States. And I will say that their conventional military capabilities being destroyed, while that may be a good thing, we are in a moment of unconventional warfare where the Iranians or the Russians or others can show that with very, very crude techniques, explosive-laden drones, they can do as much damage as conventional militaries can do, as much damage as a country with fighter jets and tanks, because it's easier to deliver those effects. And so my concern is that not only have we radicalized a new generation of Iranians who we had hoped would be in the U.S. corner, we've now indeed encouraged the regime to attack America and American interests because it sees its fundamental survival at stake. And that's a very worrying thing indeed. And Paul, you may be right to ask, well, what would the alternative be? Well, a better alternative might have been clandestinely supporting opposition figures in Iran to help them retake their own country away from the hardline and repressive religious regime. And instead, by saying, we are going to take it and we are going to name the ruler, and Donald Trump saying, and we might own the country, we're sending the exact opposite message and making it easier for them to foster terror in the years to come. And Ken, to your question about the motives, I would go back to what Terry just said in our conversation. Is the best way to understand Donald Trump's foreign policy is to understand that almost every one of his actions has a personal motive instead of being motivated by the national interests. You may ask yourself, well, why is Donald Trump friends with a repressive regime like the Russians, but enemies with the Iranians? Well, the answer is because the Russians suck up to it, but the Iranians have threatened him. The Iranians tried to oppose him in previous elections by meddling in U.S. interests. The Iranians plotted against Donald Trump and a number of his lieutenants. And Trump admitted as much a week ago when he spoke to the Washington Post. He said, well, he tried to come after me, referencing the Ayatollah, but I got him first, making clear that his motivation, in part, for this war is a personal one, is personal animus. And now at least 6 U.S. soldiers are dead because the president had a bone to pick with the Iranians. Xander, I think that's all the time we have today. We're trying to end on time lately. We're 4 minutes into overtime, but we're going to keep this to an hour as much as we can, friends. Very grateful for you. Xander, do you want to tell them why they should join us on Wednesday? Certainly, they should join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for Defiance Daily, but people should really join us this Wednesday.
Wednesday is where the big things happen. We are started to help people answer the question, what can I do? On Wednesdays, we actually fulfill that question. So we bring on a leader, an organization that is part of a strategy to take on the administration, to win the midterms, to protect the elections. And we introduce them to you all. We make sure they're funded and have the resources they need to go win their particular fight. And we take direction from them in terms of what actions can we take, each of us in our own individual capacity, to support their mission, to make sure that they are as successful as they can be, and also to get us out in our communities or online or making phone calls or whatever it is we need to do to support them and feel good about kind of putting a little bit of our own elbow grease and energy into the fight.
That's right, my friend. So join us Wednesday, folks. We are here at Defiance Daily every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and we will announce some actions this week related to this conflict, related to holding the president accountable, and beyond this conflict, making sure that we've got an army of folks prepared to keep us from sending America's army to places that it shouldn't be. So tune in this Wednesday for more on that front. In the meantime, as we always say, stay loud, stay brave, friends, and stay together.